Good evening. Sure I'm on. Good evening, everybody. DJ, could we have in-house audio up just a smidge, if it's possible? David? Maybe. Just a try. Just because I'm usually a little bit louder when I'm this close. I'll wait till I can see him. How about now? That's perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it. I don't want to yell. All right. Good evening. I now call this July 22nd, 2025 meeting of Lancaster City Council to order. This meeting and its participants are being recorded. Please take a moment to silence your phones and your devices if you haven't done so already. During this meeting, there will be several opportunities for public comment. The first is a general public comment period for residents that have registered in advance to speak about items that are not on the agenda. Residents might also comment on individual items on our legislative agenda. That's section 9 on our agenda this evening. And finally, a second public comment period will be at the end of our agenda for any other speakers wishing to address council. All speakers will be reminded to begin with their name and block of residence for our meeting record and address their comments toward council. Please be advised that public comment is not a question-answer period. All comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. To keep time, I'll be using a timer light here. When it's green, 3 minutes is begun. When it blinks yellow, there's 1 minute remaining, and when it blinks red, 3 minutes has been exhausted. If a speaker continues after 3 minutes, I will kindly ask that they end their comment. I appreciate everyone's cooperation to maintain order and equal time. Speakers addressing City Council and members of the audience will be expected to conduct themselves in an orderly manner and remain respectful of others. And now, for all that are willing and able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Harris, would you please call the roll of members?
Yes, Madam President. Mr. Med.
Here.
Mr. Royo.
Here.
Mr. Cleese.
Here.
Ms. Craig.
Here.
Ms. Diaz.
Here.
Mr. Hirsch.
Here.
And President Baker.
Here. Our first item in front of us this evening is the approval of the minutes of our July 8th, 2025 agenda. Councilors, I will hear a motion for that.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for our meeting minutes. Any councilors that have comments on the minutes? Hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Med.
Aye.
Mr. Royo.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
And President Baker.
Aye. The next item on our agenda is proclamations, honors, awards, and resolutions of recognition. Confirming, Mr. Harris, that we have none of those this evening. Is that right?
We do not have any this evening.
Thank you very much. Councilors, unless there's any specific objection, I would like to move the report of President of Council to this point in the agenda. Great. I appreciate that. Given that many of you are here tonight regarding the planned data center on Greenfield Road, I would like to begin with some updates that are pertinent. These updates for council and the public were shared during an earlier press briefing this afternoon. It was attended by the mayor and representatives from Carissa Technology Parks and Wolson and Turner Construction. This is particularly important. As of at least 5:30, I hadn't seen any coverage on this, and I think it's important that the information is disseminated to the public. So here is a rundown. You're going to hear me talk a lot, so get ready. 2 existing industrial sites at 216 Greenfield Road and 1375 Harrisburg Pike are being developed by Carissa Technology Parks and Machine Investment Group. The construction is being managed by Wolson and Turner Construction. Only one of those properties, 216 Greenfield Road, has any active building permits under review. There are not definitive plans for 1375 Harrisburg Pike at this time. Construction at Greenfield Road has begun and is expected to be completed in summer of 2027. The city is required to comply with existing legislation and state law in dealing with property owners and their use. This includes the city's zoning ordinance, subdivision ordinance, and land development ordinance that complies with the PA Municipalities Planning Code and all state laws. A note on zoning. As you may know, the city determined that zoning was allowed by right, meaning the current zoning applies to the proposed use. The future land use map of Our Future Lancaster also designates these areas of the city as appropriate for high-density industrial and regional commercial development. I want to also note that changes to the zoning ordinance require a lengthy process, including review and approval by the County Planning Commission, several public meetings, and a public hearing. And under the matter of the building permit, based upon the building permit applications that were submitted to the city for 216 Greenfield Road, none of the work currently being performed or planned under those permits constitutes a land development or subdivision subject to Planning Commission approval. If future work extends beyond the existing building's footprint, the land development process would be applicable. City oversight. There has been and continues to be considerable review and oversight done by city staff, including building permit applications, reviewed to assure conditional approval and compliance with all applicable codes, including construction, demolition, and fire mitigation. Updates on water usage. These sites will not rely on large volumes of water for cooling purposes, in contrast to other data centers. These sites will use fans for air cooling. Additionally, existing ordinances protect the city from having to provide water to any customer under any circumstances, most especially if we do not have the capacity to do so. I want to reiterate, and this is important, that existing ordinances already ensure that we are not required to provide water in the instances where we do not have capacity. A note on power. Carissa Technology Parks is working closely with PPL to assure electrical needs are met without impact to their customers. They reported this afternoon. Carissa is paying for upgrades to electrical substations on the Greenfield property to reinforce the power grid. PPL is building a new switchyard as well as adding resiliency to the local grid. Council will continue to monitor these updates from that utility. A note on fire safety. Fire Chief Hutchinson has been involved in the review to ensure that the state-of-the-art fire prevention systems are in place and ensure that our firefighters are prepared for any emergency response. Notes on noise. The developers have assessed the potential for noise impact at Greenfield Road, and they have found through their review that the data center will be noise neutral, meaning the noise generated by the data center will be at the level of or less than the current noise level at the site. This is yet to be independently evaluated by the city. Council will also continue to ensure the public is updated on this matter. A note on jobs that was shared at the press conference this afternoon. The city is pleased that a local construction company, Wolson, is undertaking this project, generating local employment of between 600 and 1,000 construction jobs, as well as 150 approximate new permanent jobs in Lancaster. I do want to make notes on city benefits that were shared at the conference. The productive use of these sites will have tangible benefits to the city's revenues and thus the taxpayers. The sale and redevelopment of these properties impact the real estate transfer tax, assessed value for real estate taxes, and building permit revenue. Another note, in addition to the tangible economic benefits from the city on the city's revenues, Mayor Sirachi stated she will be negotiating a community benefit agreement that will demonstrate that Carissa Technology Parks and its tenants are committed to being good neighbors here in Lancaster, and more details will be forthcoming, and council will monitor those updates. I also want to make a note about opportunities for future engagement on this matter. Carissa announced their intention to hold a town hall in the future, so directly with the developer, to discuss more details as they become available related to power sources, etc. So we will continue to push out updates as we learn from them when they will hold those. That concludes my council president's report this evening. Members of council, thank you for allowing me to move that forward in our agenda this evening. We will now move into our first public comment period. This is reserved for residents who have contacted the city prior to this meeting to request the opportunity to address council. This was before the 2 p.m. deadline to get our meeting materials together. Duration of comments are limited to 3 minutes. I've asked Mr. Harris to please put a list of those who have registered for public comment in advance on the screen so that you can know when you're next and proceed to the microphone there. Just a note, please begin with your name and block of residence for our meeting record. And as you might be the first person to reach the microphone, you may need to turn it on. It may already be on. And I'll be keeping time. Thank you so much. Mr. Harris, our first speaker.
Our first speaker is Tony Hopkins.
Good evening, sir. Can you just make sure there might be a button? Or not? It's okay. We're working on borrowed tech. There we go. Thank you so much.
Madam President, Madam Mayor, I'm now a retired attorney. I practiced law here in the city for many, many years, both for a rather prominent firm, and I had my own office for 10 or 11 years on Walnut Street. I'd like to begin my comments by paying my respects to Councilman Ahmed. I've known the councilman since he was a 12-year-old boy playing right guard for the East Pete Bulldog football team. My son was playing right tackle on that team. So, Councilman, it's good to see you raised up to a position of prestige. I never doubted you would achieve that. So, my comments about traffic. About 2 weeks ago, I was driving north on Mary Street. I want to say I went home on Walnut Street every day for 30 plus years. So I was trying to turn left on the Walnut Street, and I couldn't see a thing, okay? I had a conversation with one of your staffers when I brought this to the attention of the clerk, and she told me that the city traffic plan believes or is drawn in such a way as to quote-unquote daylight those intersections so that people can see oncoming traffic. I'm here to tell you it's a fiasco, okay? I waited and waited and waited. I eventually nosed my way out, and as I looked to my right, there were 3 cars doing at least 35 miles an hour coming up that incline on Walnut Street. Everybody accelerates to come up Walnut Street. If I had waited 2 more seconds, there would have been a 4-car collision at that intersection. If I had been crossing Walnut Street, it would have been a T-bone collision, okay? Since then, I've made it my business to pay more attention when I drive out Walnut Street, and I'm going to tell you that problem exists at every intersection you have on Walnut Street and Lemon Street, except the ones where you have traffic lights. You've daylighted those intersections by removing 1 parking place. That is not nearly sufficient. It is literally impossible to see the oncoming traffic heading west on Walnut Street pretty much at every intersection you have. It's an extremely hazardous situation. I will tell you furthermore that conversation I've had with a young person, a young woman who tells me that a lot of the young moms on those streets are extremely concerned about the speed of the traffic coming up Walnut Street and the inability to see at intersections. It's an extremely, extremely hazardous situation. It's complicated by the bike lane and the X'd out lane you have so cars' doors can open and not interfere with the bike lane. I'm not an anti-bicycle guy. When I was a young man, I had a very significantly high-level bike. I put it on my shoulder. I flew to England and bicycled, okay? So
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins.
It's a severe situation. You need to pay attention to it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Harris, our next speaker.
Next speaker is Mary McLean.
Yeah, Mary
Thank you.
McLean,
And just as a reminder, you're already doing it. Please begin with your block. Thank you.
Mary McLean, 123 South Christian Street. And I was glad to hear the updates, but I still have concerns about the data centers proposed in Lancaster.
Just come right into the mic. Thank you.
And I know that the one is going to be cooled by air instead of water, but air cooling could mean significant noise pollution for anyone living within a quarter mile of it. The decibels reach well over those considered safe for humans near air-cooled data centers. Lancaster City zoning told me today that in practice they can only take the word of the applicant and can't determine ahead of time if the business will be noisy. In fact, city zoning said that the data center company met with city officials, and one of the things they discussed was noise. The city was convinced by the response of the company that there would be no noise problem, but this is just based on what they want to say. In fact, if you look at the other data centers around the country, noise is a problem. The city noise ordinance can come into play only after the center is built and operating, at which point it would be impossible for residents to get any enforcement. And PA State has no noise laws that might help. And I couldn't tell from what you did and you said in your update whether city officials have promised tax breaks to the data centers. There are 170 properties in the city that have local tax exemptions, mostly hospital, church, and school. The state of PA is about to pass bills with incentives to lure AI data centers to our state. Some municipalities and states have offered tax breaks and regretted it later because they are difficult to end. Washington State approved tax breaks for data centers without public input, I might add. And they are suffering that loss of revenue for very few jobs that were created by having the data centers there. The typical data center employs 50 to 200 permanent technical and maintenance jobs. I know they told you something like up to 1,000. That's not what the usual one is. And so if the data centers proposed here in Lancaster do not pay local taxes, there will be no value to having them here other than ridding ourselves of the problem of an empty warehouse. Residents may find themselves funding new transmission lines down the road, as has happened in some municipalities. Something else to think about. The city approved demolition of the Greenfield site building June 30th. But if the approval was made public, it was not front page news as perhaps it should have been.
Ms. McLean, we've reached 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank
Feels
you.
like a lack of transparency.
Mr. Harris, our next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Jackie Snyder.
Is Jackie Snyder present this evening? Okay. Mr. Harris, our next speaker.
And next is Rachel Bear.
Thank you. Is Rachel with us this evening? Okay. We will move. Our next speaker.
Is Amy Ernst.
There we go. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Amy Ernst. I live on the 800 block of Columbia Avenue in the city. I'm here to propose a textual amendment to the zoning ordinance to reclassify data centers moving forward as digital infrastructure facilities, permitted only in general industrial zones subject to conditional use review. We all know these are not wholesale trade and storage facilities. They don't store anything traditional, and they don't do it in a traditional way. And wholesale trade and storage facilities require one of the lowest levels of oversight. These types of centers require far higher levels of oversight. It's like calling them storage facilities and requiring such low levels of oversight is like calling a toxic waste facility storage because it stores toxic waste. Whether it's a massive drain on the power grid or water supply that residents might carry the weight of, or the alarming health effects already being seen in communities across the U.S. from their cooling fans, and there will be more effects to come. This is the Wild West for these companies. But these data centers do have the power to have a really negative impact on this incredible city. Other counties are starting to take action. The language that I was focusing on, which I sent in emails earlier today, is a digital infrastructure amendment is from Frederick County, Maryland, where they're not letting these companies bait them and harm their communities. I know many people here today have worked really hard over the past 20 years to build this city into one of the most desirable small cities to live in. Please don't let it be destroyed by letting big tech walk all over us. They'll fly in their specialists. They won't create many new jobs here. The construction jobs will be temporary. They'll take what they need, they'll make huge profits, and they'll just leave the city in its wake. As I said before, these are not traditional storage facilities, so I am proposing this textual amendment. Whether it can apply to these data centers or any moving forward, they should not be classified as wholesale trade and storage, and they need a new classification with higher oversight and conditional use permitting.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, our next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is John Tel Toland.
And I'll just remind folks we have the list and the order they were received on the screen behind us. Good evening.
Good evening, John Tel Toland, first and only block of Wise Ave. I don't come here often. When I'm here, you usually know there's a problem. There's tons of people here. Councilor Bakay, I heard what you said, and thank you for saying that at the beginning. But I still think that many people here are probably still skeptical and concerned. And I hope that there is some transparency that continues to happen going forward. And I hope that people continue to come and check on them and see what goes on. I had a lot of things that I wanted to say, and I think I will hold off on some of them. But I did email you all as well. I think that we're all still very concerned about the impacts, and the things that you said still didn't really do much for me. I'm still very concerned, and I would like to see you guys address this more and do your own research as to the impacts of Memphis, Tennessee, for example, and what's been going on there, and the town hall meetings that have been held with no accountability and no transparency whatsoever after the fact. And you giving the spiel of what you just said, it's kind of, to me, it sounds like fluff. And I believe I only heard in reference to like Greenfield Road, and I think there's another site on Harrisburg Pike that's being looked at, right? I just think that there should be a big, firm stance that is a collaboration between the community and city council, because we really have to cut this off at the head before anything else goes any further. I don't think that we should even be considering that any of these facilities are anywhere in the county. So I'll keep an eye out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tolan. Just for clarification, and I appreciate your words, the information that was provided at my report at the top of the meeting was a way to disseminate the information that was given at the press event earlier tonight. Not necessarily a judgment statement, but the factual information that was shared. So we will continue. And I do want to, and I think I've reiterated this to some of you who may have reached out to me personally, that members of council are interested in preserving the public safety resources and interests in this, and have been working as we've been made aware of this, which was not terribly long ago. But I want to ensure that there is continued oversight. So, but I appreciate your words and thank you for that. Mr. Harris, our next speaker.
Our next speaker is Brian Nelson.
Evening. As Mr. Nelson is coming forward, I'll just remind everyone that the names are on the screen in the list in the order in which they were received, so the next folks can be ready. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Brian Nelson. I live on the 100 block of East Lemon, and I wanted to talk about the planned data center as well. I think that I have an issue with two major corporations telling us what will and will not be good for our citizens. I think that's up for us to decide. And I think that we have these data center companies coming here trying to use up all our power because they don't think we have enough to fight back. And I think that I have an issue with that. My major issue is to use computers, you have to use a lot of energy, you create a lot of heat that burns a lot of carbon. And they're gonna set that off into Lancaster County with these planned data centers in these areas that are gonna create noise pollution whether you like it or not. And in fact, it takes more energy to cool these data centers than they create computing power. So there's nothing about these data centers that screams energy efficiency to me. And we're already getting hit with hikes from PPL. I don't believe them when they say I'm not gonna get a hike. I don't believe that for a second. And I think that is on you guys as city councilors to actually, what they said is take a stand and let us know whether or not you agree or disagree with having this data center in our community. Because I think that the community right now is ready to tell you that they don't want it. And I think that that's on you guys to do your job and make sure that they've been heard. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Harris, our next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Mimi Shapiro.
Didn't think I saw Mimi this evening. Mr. Harris, our next speaker then.
And next is Emma Burgess.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello. Yeah, like you said, my name is Emma Burgess. I live on the 600th block of West Vine Street, and I hold a master's degree in electrical engineering. I really thank you, President Beke, for the updates. I think that was really helpful context. And actually, I really appreciate the comments by Brian. I'm kind of going to provide a little bit more context in terms of the numbers. In 3 minutes, I really only have time to talk about the utility impacts of building a data center. I think you've probably read the LNP article from July 16th, but let me quickly reiterate a few points. The data center is estimated to consume 100 megawatts of power and would run 24/7. That is 70,000 megawatt hours per month. The average Pennsylvania household, according to the EIA in 2022, consumes 854 kilowatt hours per month, which means that the data center would consume the energy equivalent of 85,000 homes in Lancaster on the low end. There are 21,000 homes in Lancaster City, according to the Census Bureau. Adding a data center would use the energy equivalent of 4 times the entirety of Lancaster City houses on the low end. On the high end, it would use the energy equivalent of the entirety of Lancaster County households. Really quick, I'd like to note that the LNP article misleadingly gives numbers for 1 megawatt, which is 100 to 300 times less than this proposed data center, which they say would power 400 to 900 homes for a year, and using recent data from the EIA, I get 850 to 2,500 homes, which is twice as much. I spoke to the reporter. His numbers were based on 2001 figures and had some assumptions in there. After speaking together, he agreed that the numbers I just told you were correct. Regarding the water cooling to fans cooling, I think that would increase the amount of energy used there. Either way, that puts immense stress on a power grid that is already getting increasingly expensive for us. Like Brian said, from January 2020 to today, electricity rates have gone up by 50%, according to PPL's own data records. Across news sources and climate advocacy organizations, experts always agree that when data centers are built within an existing power grid, everyday consumers always pay the price. Lancaster City residents are already struggling to pay those bills. This would make things worse. It's not just the cost to increase the power grid, it's the cost to maintain a much, 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 much larger power grid. And we have no guarantee that Carissa is going to pay that cost forever. Senator McCormick has been touting the economic benefits of this data center, but I ask you to consider, Council, are 150 jobs worth the decades-long price that Lancaster residents are going to have to pay for this data center? And I really have to ask you to consider to put safeguards against this kind of development that jeopardizes the future of Lancastrians for decades to come. Please consider public input before allowing this to go forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, our next speaker.
Next speaker is Dan Weigel.
Good evening, sir.
Dan Weigel, the only block of Clarendon Drive. Data centers are not warehouses. They do not merely store products and should not be classified as wholesale trade and storage. Data centers consume massive amounts of dirty fossil fuels, they pollute the environment, and they are hazardous to the health of those living nearby. I am not willing to trade my health, the health of my neighbors, or the health of the environment for corporate profits. I hope that each of you are also unwilling to make that trade. We are not helpless bystanders to the corporate, profit-driven AI so-called revolution. We the people have a choice, and we do not want it. This is a bipartisan consensus, with a recent LNP poll showing more than twice as many residents opposing the data center as favoring it. So on a local level, we must say no to data centers. Let us choose people, the ones living and raising families here right now, not corporate profits. I understand that saying no to data centers is not easy in a legal sense. What I ask is this: a text amendment to the zoning ordinance to reclassify data centers from their current status as wholesale trade and storage. Instead, I propose a new category: digital infrastructure facilities that will require oversight, regulation, and a lengthy review process with ample public input prior to any permits being issued. Regardless of whether it is too late to stop the first facility, please act urgently to protect our community moving forward. Data centers are a new and unique form of harm, and they require an appropriate response. I get that it is a long process to change the zoning ordinance. Let's start that process now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, our next speaker.
Our next speaker is Abby Haney.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Abby Haney. I live on the 600 block of East Madison Street, and I am, like so many others here, about the AI data centers. I have some major concerns. So I want to talk a little bit about electrical usage, but so many of you have already made really great points and are far more educated than I am. But CoreWeave, which is the same company that would operate here, they actually have a facility in Denton, Texas, and it's already been shown that they've doubled the amount of electricity used in Denton, using a majority of the local power system capacity. These facilities, like others have mentioned, have to be powered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And a 100 megawatt facility consumes as much electricity as 100,000 households annually. And oftentimes, residential users are left footing the bill for this huge power drain because power companies subsidize the cost of these data centers by passing along rate increases to residential customers. My PP&L rate has not gone down in 7 years that I've lived here, so I can't imagine that it will then. In regard to the belief that the building of these data centers will help the local job market, especially for the construction industry, I'm old enough to remember when they said the same thing about fracking. Instead, they brought workers from out of state, and then when things were all said and done, these companies would pack up and leave the community to deal with the environmental fallout. I saw the information from the mayor's office that these plan to be air-cooled, not water-cooled, and I just want to ask, can you confidently say that they'll remain that way? What happens when this center inevitably expands and air cooling is no longer cost-efficient or effective for CoreWeave? I could also talk at length about how climate change is not going to spare us and will cause shrinking of our water tables, and that Lancaster has the second worst air quality in the Mid-Atlantic and 22nd worst in the country. I'm calling for a change in zoning laws like so many others have. This center falls under wholesale trade and storage, which is outdated and is not applicable to this proposed data center, in my opinion. It fails to account for the unique risk and harm associated with data centers and what happens when these facilities want to expand outside of the footprint. Can you make a commitment for an honest stormwater evaluation like was mentioned by the mayor's spokesperson in the LMP article earlier today? If it's found that it would negatively harm Lancaster, can you truly say you would deny their request to expand? I also have questions about the Good Neighbor Bargaining Agreement that was mentioned. What kind of public input will we have on that? Or is the mayor going to make those negotiations unilaterally? We deserve public input from the beginning of this process, not after the wool has already been pulled over our eyes. Our community deserves better than a huge fast-tracked energy-eating project that will affect our community for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, our next speaker.
Our next speaker is David DeVries.
Good evening.
DeVries, thank you. David DeVries, 400 block of East Grant Street. A lot of people said a lot of things better than I could. They did a lot more research than I had time to, but I'll just say I'm here to ask you to put our community ahead of outside business interests and to deny this in any way possible, these data centers. The link between environmental destruction is clear from so many other examples that have already been said today. They're going to use so much power, massive amounts of energy, which will accelerate climate collapse, not just here, but everywhere around the globe from all these data centers. Terrible, terrible for the environment. And the harmful pollutants that they also may cause are going to harm our most vulnerable residents as well as anybody else in the environment, in the area. But I also want to say the AI industry itself is the project of billionaires who seek to cut costs by making our jobs obsolete. We don't need to scab ourselves. We don't need to let these plutocrats into our lives to run things just because they have money. I don't think we need to give them the tools to take away our livelihoods while also destroying our environment around us. We have the choice to stop these things, and we need to decide who we work for. Do we work for these people just because they have money, they can come into our community and destroy the environment, or do we have the option to stop that from happening? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, our next speaker.
Next speaker is Christine Kennedy.
Good
My
evening.
name is Christine Kennedy. I live at 10 North Market Street, downtown Lancaster. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the council and all of those that have spoken so far. to Mayor Sirachi, Council President Baquet, City Council members, and journalists that are in the House. I'm writing to you, and will forward this in an email, in regards to the proposed air-cooled aspect of the data centers in Lancaster City and their environmental impact. I read in this morning's LMP paper, as others have said, that the data centers will initially be air-cooled, mitigating concerns that were voiced earlier about the water concerns. I'm someone who's experienced the noise pollution impacts that data center fans firsthand. I want to voice my concerns with the hope that we can accelerate city policy to address this in the future, and as much as we can with those facilities that have already been approved. Earlier this year, my husband and I visited a family member who lives near the data center that's featured in the Time magazine article, "We're Living in a Nightmare, Inside a Health Crisis of a Texas Bitcoin Town." The article reveals the health impacts to neighbors, animals, vegetation caused by the constant noise from the fans that cool the data center, including loss of hearing, fainting spells, debilitating vertigo, and nausea. The fans are heard miles away. My cousin's home is 5 miles away, and we can hear the fans there. The recent LNP articles note that the city classified a data center land use as wholesale trade and storage. The regulations related to that do not take into account the unique impacts. As a former urban planner, I turned to the American Planning Society Association for resources and found zoning for data centers and cryptocurrency mining. This article addresses that impact for data centers to look at noise as well as water and power. I ask that you assure that the city's noise ordinance covers and controls this type of noise source so that Lancaster City will not have the same situation as Granbury, Texas. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, our next speaker.
Next speaker is Rachel Kruger.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Rachel Kruger, and I'll admit that while I do live outside of the city itself, I do live on Greenfield Road, about a half mile from the proposed data center. I appreciate you with providing me a moment to discuss the proposed data centers. To provide you a little bit of background so you know where I'm coming from, I hold a degree in geology and have worked in the environmental field for the last 8 years. As others have told you, AI data centers present a number of environmental hazards. We're seeing that now as more and more of these facilities make national headlines for churning out enormous amounts of greenhouse gases and other compounds inextricably linked to cancer and cardiovascular and respiratory disease. So, as another concerned citizen, I have questions. Some you did touch on at the beginning of the meeting, but I have a few more concerns. For example, why an AI data center? I understand that not all land will meet all use criteria. I understand that after years of industrial use, the process of bringing that land up to something like residential use would be incredibly costly. Red Rose Commons comes to mind. That area is commercially developed because it was previously occupied by the aluminum industry. Redeveloping that area to residential standards wasn't feasible, so instead we made it commercial, and it created jobs and brought revenue. I also have questions like, how will our energy infrastructure be protected? In other communities with similar facilities, we have seen the increased energy use by these data centers get passed on to residents. Should we expect to see our utility bills increase? And what protections for the environment and human health are being considered? What third-party review is being performed? And what if those considerations aren't enough? What happens when our community gets sick? When our already heavily burdened healthcare system is unable to keep up with the increase in asthma and heart disease and cancer? And what happens with the lawsuit that follows? Because as we all know, an emerging environmental concern is a lawsuit on the horizon. What then? And maybe these questions have been considered. It sounds like you have more information than was originally presented to us, and if that's the case, then great. But I don't know because that information has not yet been adequately communicated to us. Now, I don't expect everyone to become a tree-hugging hippie. I don't think that's realistic. but I ask that we think of people like my grandma, who over the last decade of her life had such severe asthma that she was unable to get the mail at the end of her own driveway. That is how bad Lancaster County's air quality is. I look forward to the forthcoming information that you promised, and in addition with the developer, I'd also like to add that I'd like to meet with the proposed tenants. I want to make sure that they understand that by building here, they have the same obligation as you or I do to protect this community. I yield my time.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, our next speaker.
Next speaker is Ann Torres.
Good evening.
Hi. Oh. Hi, my name is Ann Torres. I live in Lettuce, but I work in Lancaster. Years back, my friend had a baby. Through IVF, they finally had their baby. But over time, they noticed that he was having issues breathing. In and out of hospitals, extensive stays, but no answers. Just constant treatment to keep him alive and breathing. And it's heartbreaking to see a child who is very healthy in every other way confined to a hospital bed for too much of his life. I remembered the day she came to me and said, "Ann, we'll probably need to move. He can't breathe here. It's the air." As the move never came to fruition, he saw more hospital visits throughout his childhood. He is 9 now. He is relatively stable, except for the constant struggle of allergies and asthma. If he gets sick, like the common cold, there's a good chance that he ends up hospitalized. Is this the life, the future we want for our children? Lancaster already ranks 22nd for the worst air quality in the nation. Air pollutants cause roughly 200,000 premature deaths yearly in the U.S. Now, this should go without saying, but no one should be dying from breathing the air. These electricity-consuming, fossil fuel-powered AI data centers will accelerate that pollution massively. In PA, from 2024 to 2025, there has been a 174% increase in electric use due to these AI data centers, to the tune of $9 billion, a cost that is spread to you and me, because AI data centers, while they get to privatize their profits, they get to socialize their operational costs. In areas of high data center growth, consumers can expect to see an additional estimated $450 added to their yearly electric costs. Oh, and not only do we help to pay to keep these centers running, but these companies are getting tax exemptions in 36 states, including PA. To qualify for these exemptions, they must spend $75 million on their investment property and guarantee at least 25 jobs. 25 jobs, what a low bar, an insult to the community and trade for our health. This exemption guarantees that they do not have to pay sales tax on the very costly vital tech equipment that they need to build these centers, which of course means PA loses millions every time these centers are built. Millions that could go into healthcare, housing, and other social safety nets that we are quickly losing. In Indiana, an Amazon data center promised to create 1,000 new jobs. They failed to mention that 60% of those jobs would be temporary construction, and the other 40% could only be fulfilled when they completed their total project of 16 total data centers. So as AI data centers steamroll this country, this state, this county, quickly outpacing any regulation in their industry, please ask yourself, what are you, Shapiro, McCormick, willing to trade for short-term monetary investments? A child's future? This cannot happen. Lancaster cannot let this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, our next speaker.
Next speaker is Frank Arcoleo.
Arcoleo.
Good evening, Mr. Arcoleo.
Hi, thank you. Frank Arcoleo, Old Trinity Place. It's only a circle, so 1 block. All the other speakers have dwelt on all the bad aspects of having a data center, the gluttonous use of electricity, the gluttonous use of water, or if you're air cooling it, more gluttonous use of electricity, and the lack of jobs that eventually come out no matter what they promise. But I'm going to ask the big Watergate question today. What did you know, and when did you know it? We only found out on Friday. But guess what? There was a $130 million investment purchased in February. How come we're just finding out about this now? The paper said when that investment was made, it was made eyed for data centers. Did you not notice? You know, I've been in business and in consulting for nearly 50 years. There is no one that I've ever met who wants to go spend $130 million speculatively without knowing that that investment was going to yield a return, without knowing that it was going to be just okay with everyone to put a data center here. And so we find out about it on July 18th. None of you who found out before that raised any qualms, talked to anyone, talked to the public about what it might do to us. And now, guess what? We're told, it's too late to do anything. Oh, what a shame. If you had started in February, we could have done a lot. Do you think we wouldn't notice? Do you think we wouldn't care? Do you think we have to play cat and mouse with you to check up on you to make sure that you're doing your job? What we want is for you to stop this damn data center right now. We want control by the city over such properties. They are not warehouses, trust me on that. We need you to do the kinds of zoning amendments that have been presented here tonight. And the regulations need to guarantee water use, electricity use, and to make sure that any other environmental impact is dealt with, not by their assurances, but by third-party objective people. Even Manor Township has this. Why can't Lancaster City? I think somebody's been had. Either you guys have been had or we've been had, but it's not good for Lancaster County. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I want to thank the members of the public for coming out tonight and speaking to council. As I mentioned before, this is new information to many of us, despite insinuations. And I want to also assure you that council is committed to keeping the public informed as updates are provided on all matters, including any public engagement opportunities that would be before this body or any other opportunity to do so. So thank you very much for that. We will proceed with the next item on our meeting agenda this evening. I will, if anyone needs to step out, give you a moment to do so, but otherwise we will keep going. And again, thank you very much for your comments this evening. The next item on our agenda is reports requested by council. That is the capital budget public hearing, and I know that we'll have a presentation. Members of council, you were sent a presentation earlier this evening, so that should be in your email. And we have, I believe, Directors Campbell and members of the Public Works team that will be presenting. And you can join us right here. Mr. Harris confirming that the that will be displayed on the screen momentarily. Working on it? Okay, great. We'll take a brief pause as we work on technology and get set up.
Yeah, come on up.
Council, Council President, if I may, while we're getting the technology situated.
Mayor Sirachi.
I want to just acknowledge the work of the Department of Public Works in preparing for council the first ever capital plan to be presented. This is one of the requirements that was born
The wireless mics are a little finicky. We're trying.
Okay. So as I was saying, this capital plan, which Director Campbell and his team are going to discuss tonight, is part of, is an outcome of the adoption of the Home Rule Charter that requires council to be presented on an annual basis the capital plan in its totality. And so you will hear tonight related to our stormwater, our general fund, which includes our parks, active transportation, and roads, as well as our water and sewer systems. And I'm really want to just thank Director Steve Campbell for his leadership in bringing this across the finish line, along with members of his team. I also want to give an acknowledgement to David Kapach for helping to translate all of the data into a new software application that we are using that will be able to provide the kind of information that council needs to make financial decisions as it relates to our future investments in our capital infrastructure. And with that, turn it back.
Thank you very much, Mayor Sirachi. Director Campbell, team, good evening, and thank you for being here. Yes, and we'll just, as we learned at our last committee meeting, we try to have one of those on at a time, so, okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to formally present the capital budget in the form of the capital investment program for fiscal years 2026 through 2030. As per the Home Rule Charter, we must submit a capital budget annually by June of each year, which we did on June 24th of last month with a list of projects published on June 30th. In this presentation, we are reminding you of the drivers of the capital budget, and we will be highlighting most of the large projects within the budget. Our esteemed deputy directors will present their respective portfolios, and you should ask them any questions that come to mind regarding the work in their purview. And as noted in the earlier presentations, it is an opportunity for you to clarify how you would like this information presented in the future. Director Tina Campbell will be available to refresh and update you as to how we establish estimated costs, etc., if necessary, and as you have questions. Next slide, please. In the aggregate, this is a graphic of the 2026 to 2030 CIP over the next 5 years of just over $300 million. You'll note that the largest investments are in water at 36%, or $108 million, wastewater at 31%, or $94 million. Both of those represent 2/3 of the CIP over the next 5 years. And Deputy Director Christine Volke-Hilditch will describe the drivers and the projects that make up that portfolio of projects. The remaining third is made up of streets at 18%, or $54 million, and parks and public works administration work, each at 5%, at approximately $15.5 million each. Deputy Director Cindy McCormick and I will present and describe that work. The balance of that third is in stormwater, just under 5% at approximately $13.6 million, and Deputy Director Molly Dager will describe that work. Next slide. This just presents the work described by Enterprise Fund, where Parks, Streets, and Public Works Administration comprise the general fund, stormwater is its own enterprise fund, and water and wastewater, respectively, are separate enterprise funds. Next slide. We'll start with Parks and Streets, so I will turn it over to Deputy Director of Public Right-of-Way and the City Engineer, Cindy McCormick.
Thank you, Director Campbell. If you could go to the next slide, please. So these are our main investment drivers, I would say, related to the public right-of-way. We have, and these plans generally guide the investments that we're making in each of these areas. So we have the Parks Master Plan, which was adopted last year. This is identifying a lot of our priorities related to renovating our parks and any other amenities or services that the city may need related to parks. We have our Vision Zero and traffic safety plan. This is where we are prioritizing traffic roadway improvements to the Vision Zero is that we have 0 fatal and serious injury crashes within the city. So that is our goal, and that's what we strive towards. So that's making sure that we're focusing our resources on the most dangerous locations. Then we have our active transportation plan, and this is identifying transportation facilities that provide alternative modes of travel. So rather than relying on the car to get everywhere, we're trying to provide infrastructure for bicyclists, pedestrians, other modes, so that they have options to feel safe when they're traveling throughout the city. I would say a lot of our projects, they sort of overlap with the Vision Zero and active transportation, where we're trying, while we're providing that active transportation, we're also making sure that we're improving safety for all users, so not just the pedestrians and bicyclists. And then finally, maintaining our infrastructure. So, you know, our traffic signals, paving our streets, those kind of improvements that need to be made to maintain that surface infrastructure. And again, anytime that we're doing any of those types of projects, we're looking to see how we can improve safety for the people using them. So a lot of our investment includes sort of baselines of making investments in each of these areas, but then also as additional initiatives might come along, they are added as well. Next slide. So the first slide, and this is very busy, so understand if we can't get through necessarily all of it, but we'll focus on our parks planning. And these are ordered in the amount of investment, so the highest investment are located at the top, but I may jump around a little bit related to this. So just from our parks master plan, you know, we identified 3 parks that were sort of the highest need, located in the southeast. They were Joe Jackson Tot Lot, the Yule Gantz Playground, and South End Park. So we have been able to prioritize those parks, and actually Joe Jackson and Yule Gantz have just gone out, well, we'll be going out to bid, I think tomorrow, as we have completed the design for that and are ready to get that towards construction. We are also working on design related to the South End Park as well. And then just focusing on the other project that's sort of in construction or will be soon. If you go down the list to the Conestoga Pines connection, that is a connection where we're connecting the Walnut Street fishing area to the Conestoga Pines Park. So creating a path between the two, crossing the river, and getting over to Conestoga Pines Park. So that is actually out to bid now as well. So those are projects that are currently or will be in construction soon. And then just sort of going through identifying what our next priorities are related to planning and what parks need to be improved next. We have Reservoir Park, which would, you know, that's a very large park for us, so that will require planning, and then it has a large construction cost that we're anticipating. And I guess this is just sort of an estimate because we haven't really gone through the whole process of what exactly the scope of work will be, but given the size, we anticipate it will be a large project. Other planning projects include, we've talked about a municipal pool. That's another area where the pool currently at Conestoga Pines Park is starting to become in disrepair, and you know, based on the location, we want to look at if there are alternative locations. So that's one of the areas where we're starting to look at planning for those. Other areas include the Duke Street Mall, the linear park, so that 50-foot wide park that travels along South Duke Street. We're making improvements along South Duke Street, and that project I'll talk about a little bit later, but we're also wanting to identify improvements to activate the Duke Street Mall area as well. And then then also we have Culleton Park Phase 2, which was a building that the city is currently using that was acquired adjacent to Culleton Park, that the city is currently using as a salt shed, but that future plans could include additional park amenities there as well. So these are projects that we're looking at planning over the next 5 years, starting the planning, and even some could potentially go to construction. Do we want to ask?
No, I'd like to just, I'd like to just make it clear what the columns are reading. Black on red is a difficult visual, and I apologize for that. But the first column, the column on the left is the description of the project. The next columns are fiscal 26, fiscal 27, fiscal 28, fiscal 29, and fiscal 30, culminating in a total for the project, which is in bold, almost in the middle of the sheet. The next column is the column that indicates what is already funded or known to be funded. The next column is what is anticipated for the 2025 bond issue. The next column is the column of funds that have already been granted towards these projects. The next column is a column for other sources of funding. They may not be bond, may not be grants, they might be something else, a little bit different. The second to last column is the 2028 bond, so that's looking 3 years out at an anticipated additional bond on a 3-year cycle. And last but certainly not least is the column called unfunded, which recognizes that there may still be work to be done to find the funding for this project. And in general, if we do not find that funding in the time that it is needed, we will do one of 2 or 3 things. We will either seek to see if that can be added to the fiscal 2028 bond. We will look to possibly defer the project, or we will look to de-scope or reduce the scope of that project to stay within the funds and in the budget we already have. That's the sequence of the columns that you'll see as you go forward for all of these presentations.
Thank you for that, Director Campbell. I appreciate it. A quick question that may help provide context here. The grant column are grants that we know we have received only. Okay. And not to say there won't be additional grants in the future. And then I also want to kind of put a fine point on the fact that this is a plan that spans till fiscal year 2030, and we're going to be looking at it again every year. So these columns will come up again and again and again to benchmark and also update us on changes, challenges, opportunities every single year.
Absolutely. We're trying to build that culture of knowledge of how to read this kind of a capital budget. We're asking if there's things that you need presented in a slightly different way to make it clearer for you, clearer for the public to understand, but also to recognize that you'll be seeing the same things year after year, but we'll be revisiting the entire program as the time moves forward.
Thank you. I'll pause if counselors have anything additional at this point, and we'll continue. Thank you.
Okay, next slide then, please. Thank you, Director Campbell. So this slide is highlighting basically what we're calling the streets or the public right-of-way projects. As you can see, there are many there. And again, this is identifying projects related to Vision Zero, related to active transportation, and then just maintenance of our existing infrastructure in general. And you know, a lot of the projects that we end up progressing are ones that we are able to find some matching grant funds for. So that's often a driver as to what we're trying to progress. Our projects that we have a high level of confidence that we would be able to obtain grant funding. So I'll start at the top. We have our Safe Streets for All projects, and this is related to the federal highway grant that we received to implement our Vision Zero plan. So the grant is worth $12.6 million with a $15 million total. I will say that some of these, you know, when I mentioned the $12.6 million, starts in 2026, so it's not accounting for funds that have been expended in 2025. So we are, these include some supplemental studies, like looking at the conversion of our one-way streets to two-way, just implementing roadway improvement projects on our high injury network, identifying improvements around schools to help, kids traveling to and from school, just to improve the safety in those areas. We are focusing on initially Carter McRae and the McCaskey campus. So, and then just to give a plug too, we have an open house next. It's on the 30th, I believe it's next Thursday. That will be our first open house related to Vision Zero and our Safe Streets for All projects. So it's going to be an all-day drop-in session at the library. So I encourage everyone to come and stop and see in more detail the work that we're doing on that project. Next is our Water Street Bike Boulevard project, where we're adding bike facilities, not adding, but using and making improvements along Water Street from Harrisburg Ave to Fairview for a bike boulevard. This includes a couple off-road sections, and this is quite a large project, but we do have a large amount of grant funding that is funding that project as well. So that should be happening, starting construction hopefully next year. The next project is the Northeast Greenway Walkway Boardwalk project. This is a project connecting the Operations Center at Riverside Avenue to the Walnut Street fishing area, which would then connect to the Conestoga Pines Park connection that I just spoke about earlier. So that's another project, and again, we have significant grant funding related to that project. And just to talk about some of the traffic, we have quite a few traffic signal projects. The state offers grant funding that allows us to take advantage of that almost every year. So we're wanting to make sure that we're using that resource to upgrade our traffic signals. There are a couple other traffic signal projects noted on here, which I won't go into a lot of detail on, but you can see them listed. Chesapeake and Broad bike facilities, we're looking at adding bike facilities on that stretch of roadway from Queen Street all the way to King Street, so that will be a significant addition. And we are fortunate enough to have PennDOT will be paying for the paving of that street, so that's another great opportunity there. And then I will also highlight Church Street improvements and another project where PennDOT is assisting. We will be taking away one lane of that 3-lane section to 2 lanes, and then also making bike side path improvements as well. And then there are also Ann and Juniata. Ann is on our high injury network, so that is another project where we're trying to improve safety around some of the school campuses related to that. And then I will jump to South Duke Street. That is a project that will be going to construction that has been awarded to a contractor, so that will be starting construction this fall. And that is adding back in diagonal parking along Duke Street and a side path. So I think I'm going to stop there unless anyone has any more specific questions. I know there's a lot of projects here.
Go for it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Just one quick question regarding the grant funding. So understanding that we're anticipating some of those funding opportunities, are there any risks of losing that based on some of the proposals at the state right now?
I am not aware of any that we would be at risk of losing at this point. All the grants that are shown there, we're under contract for, so I don't anticipate any change there.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Councilor Ahmed.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Council President, and thank you. This is very informative. In regards to some of the unfunded allocations for multiple of the projects, and kind of piggybacking off Councilor Arroyo's question, if we are not seeing those get funded year over year, can we add that to the 2028 bond, like next year in the projection, or I guess also as Director Campbell mentioned, like, when would we decide, okay, like, we may need to pause this project or defer this project if we don't see it move out of that unfunded column?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the projects we're looking at planning, initially, so spending some money on design so that we can sort of, we identify the scope and then pursuing the funding. So a lot of times we'll start an initial design, but we won't get into the final design until we have that funding secured. So it's sort of, yeah, as Director Campbell mentioned, we just need to evaluate it year by year.
Yeah.
And then, and make sure that that's still the priority and, how we want to move forward with it. We also sometimes will look at how we can reduce the scope, based on, a lot of times we'll get grant awards that are less than what we asked for, so we have to adjust as more information becomes available to us.
If I may add to that as well, this is one of the advantages of having a long-term capital plan. This is the first time we've been able to look as far as 30 to 32 years in advance, not as a guarantee that that's what will happen on those particular years, but to anticipate when certain infrastructure needs to be replaced, when certain infrastructure needs to be upgraded, or as technology changes, et cetera. It does allow, as Cindy had indicated, we would be doing this assessment on an annual basis to reconfirm the level of funding that we have that's available, and would reflect if anything has changed. Costs might rise. Availability of materials may change. All of that needs to be managed on a rolling basis. So this gives us an opportunity, and you as an opportunity as well, to see what the challenges are and to help us make some of those decisions.
Yes, thank you. And I really do appreciate this level of financial planning. I have a capital plan at the hotel I manage, so, it really excites me to see that, each individual project has, the allocations year over year. So I really appreciate you and your team's efforts with that.
Thank you. Anything else from council before we proceed? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next slide, please. And now we'll turn over to the Construction and Operations Division, which is under Matt Metzler, who was not able to join us this evening. He's the Deputy Director of Construction and Operations, and will be describing the drivers and projects within the Public Works what we call the Public Works Administration portion. Next slide. So the basic investment drivers include three
Campbell, I'm sorry. I don't know why, but whenever the papers are very close to these mics, I don't know what sort of Bluetooth
It's me.
technology we're
I'm
working with here,
electric.
but
I'm just electric.
that's okay. Maybe it's you. It's your electric personality. Thank you.
So for the next 5 years or so, these are the key drivers for us. The first two are drivers not just for these next 5 years, but ongoing. Facilities and maintenance, operations and efficiency, and the Welcome Center renovation, which I'll talk about a little bit more. In terms of maintaining our parks and public property, we have 26 public parks and recreational areas, 5 wading pools, 1 full-size pool, 8 major operational facilities, 10 public restrooms, and we plan and replacement schedule based on our facilities condition assessment that we put in place back in 2022, where we were able to do a facility condition assessment of all of our built, what we call our vertical construction, including the parks. We're looking for opportunities for operational efficiencies as well, which includes combining smaller satellite offices and operations into centralized locations for efficiency, economics of scale, public convenience, and reduction in time and fuel, and combining similar functions across bureaus and departments under one roof, such as archiving, equipment storage, vehicle storage and maintenance, warehousing, and expanding capabilities and reducing costs. And certainly one jewel in the crown of Lancaster City assets, the Welcome Center renovation. The centralized hub for implementing key goals identified in the tourism master plan and implementing technology and focused advertising on realizing Lancaster as a tourist destination. Next slide. So similar to what Cindy had done, I'll be going through several of the larger projects related to Public Works Administration, construction and operations. The first one on this sheet is the Operations Center, what we're calling the Operations Center expansion. It's consolidation of functions, including equipment storage, warehousing, archives, etc. At this particular moment, we don't have the ideal location for such, but we recognize that we have facilities scattered throughout the city, and that makes us significantly less efficient and makes it difficult to maintain certain of our equipment. So we are looking at opportunities to consolidate. If we do not find the type of site that we're looking for, there actually is a space on part of one of our existing sites that might be able to accommodate part of that work. The next is the capital projects. The next is capital projects outlays for facility condition assessments. As I had indicated, the 2022 facility condition assessments gives an exhaustive list of the assets, whether they're windows, doors, foundations, roofs, equipment, appliances, and things like that, that indicate the remaining useful life of those particular assets, allow us to more predictively and more accurately determine what needs to be replaced and when it needs to be replaced, and the relative costs for that. In the past, I think we've done a very, very good job of identifying or anticipating what the needs were, but it was not based on a lot of science, if you will. We would walk each of the facilities and say, we have eight of the 40 buildings, windows are broken, it's time to replace the windows, rather than perhaps being able to do the calculus that says it's going to be less expensive to replace those 8 windows right now and wait until the remaining useful life later. So we are in the very enviable position that many of our facilities are in very good shape. And it also means we now have the tools to more accurately and more judiciously spend, rather than spend because we fear that something may fail. The next is on-site solar generation, currently unfunded, to identify and implement solar on the roofs of sites or existing city buildings. We currently spend approximately approaching $3 million annually on costs for power and electric, almost 20% of which could be generated by solar, and thus see a return in as little as 8 years. This also goes towards our climate action plan efforts. So part of the goal would be to work with solar and energy brokers, and Molly may be able to speak to a little bit more on how to utilize the roofs of buildings that are structurally appropriate for such, to add solar and therefore reduce our energy costs. The salt shed, Cindy had mentioned that. We need to be able to consolidate a single location for efficiency and convenience, saving precious moments in snow removal, but also releasing for other more public uses the site and sites that we currently use for salt storage. The Welcome Center renovation, and I neglected to indicate, but you can see the numbers up above. The Operations Center we're guesstimating will be about approximately $6.9 million over the course of several years. The capital projects outlay, we're looking at approximately $750,000 annually to look at the work that needs to be revisited from the facility condition assessment. That may increase and drop depending on the remaining useful life of certain of the assets. The on-site solar generation, we estimate for the roofs that we believe we can do this on, approximately $2.5 million. The salt shed, approximately $1.5 million. And then the Welcome Center renovation, approximately $1.5 million. Built in the late 1790s, it was built as a public office house and likely the original city hall. The building now serves as Lancaster City's Welcome Center and will be upgraded and restored to implement key goals identified in the Tourism Master Plan, including offices, meeting spaces, and display and storytelling. Two other areas where we need specific work are the Lancaster Police Station roof needs to be replaced. That building is more than 20 years, about 20 years old now. I forget exactly how old, but it is, the roof has reached the end of its designed useful life, and so it needs to be replaced. And then last, but certainly not least in this particular stretch, the citywide telephone platform replacement. It's not last. Citywide telephone platform replacement in aid of upgrading our telephone system at $184,000 or about $64,000, $62,000 per year for that upgrade. City Hall facade cleaning and sealing to the tune of $50,000 of the building we are sitting in right now. The facade requires cleaning, some modest repair, and sealing to better preserve the exterior of the building and therefore make it less expensive to maintain. And certainly last, but certainly not least, for many who inhabit the building, the recycling center at 850 New Holland Avenue, where it needs a new boiler. The people who are serving us to deal with our recycling are freezing their blanks off because of the inadequacy of the existing system. Next slide. So just in quick summary, this summarizes the subsets of the general fund CIP. Note that about $64 million of the $85 million is funded, which leaves about almost $21 million unfunded. More than 50% of the general fund CIP is from grants and other sources. We anticipate $4.2 million input from the 2028 bond, and otherwise we will continue, as we had mentioned before, to seek grants for the balance, and where not successful, we will either look to increase the ask from the 2028 bond or reduce scope for these otherwise necessary investments, or in an even worse case scenario, defer those projects. Before going into stormwater, which is the next enterprise fund, are there any questions regarding either construction and operations or anything within the general fund?
Thank you, Director Campbell. Councilors, anything before the next section? Thank you. Continue.
Okay, so now let's turn to the stormwater CIP, which Deputy Director Molly Dager will outline for us. Molly?
Sorry, everybody. Can you switch? Just don't leave that one off. Yep. We've angered the Bluetooth microphone gods. Don't use that one, and Cindy, don't forget. Just push it away. Let's try that one now. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry about that, everybody.
Even more electric, I think.
Even more electric.
Thank you, Director Campbell. Next slide, please. We'll show the pretty rain garden for a moment, and then we can advance to the next slide.
Great.
So the city's 5-year capital plan that I present to you this evening for the Stormwater Fund prioritizes strategic investments that deliver multiple benefits, environmental, economic, and community-wide. Lancaster is a national leader in green infrastructure, using our rain gardens, our tree trenches, our green roofs, our permeable pavements to manage stormwater. This is well embedded in our long-term planning, and I'll go through some examples of that on the next slide. But this is transforming how we manage water in a way that also serves our climate resilience goals and our neighborhood revitalization. So these practices are reducing flooding, improving water quality, air quality, supporting our pollinators, cooling our neighborhoods, and making our city more beautiful and livable. We've been doing green infrastructure for so long here in Lancaster that while many of our systems are performing as designed or overperforming, it is time for us to be planning strategically for as part of the long-term operation and maintenance, to be allocating some of our capital funds to more substantial corrective actions to some of our assets to ensure the continued long-term success. We've built a strong track record our projects are strategically implemented to reduce combined sewer overflows that I'm sure Christine will touch on later via our long-term control plan, and also to meet the state's permitting requirements in our non-combined parts of the city known as the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, or the MS4 areas. Next slide, please. Similar format, the first half of the slide that you see shows the different allocations from 2026 through 2030, and then some of the funding mechanisms on the right-hand side. With respect to some of those regulatory obligations that I mentioned before, I'm going to jump around a little bit. These are, again, in order in which from largest to smallest, but I wanted to just, on the long-term control plan and on our MS4 obligations, highlight first the ARI projects that you see. That's the Asset Renewal Inventory Projects. This is an acronym that we're using in our long-term control planning, but these are basically the green infrastructure projects that the city is committed to in our combined sewer system areas. Planning efforts in 2028 will dictate what those are and what those will be, because as you'll see, a lot of our initiatives are combined with other city initiatives as well. So that ARI project is directly for those combined sewer system areas. Likewise, the MS4 collection system upgrades, those are the separate sewer system areas. This could be new inlets or new piping to alleviate flooding and to improve roadway conditions and safety improvements. This could also be green infrastructure, such as the improvements that were made at Longs Park in order to meet those permitting obligations as well. One of the most important things that I wanted to show, though, is one of the city's most effective strategies is bundling these stormwater improvements with other capital improvements. So you'll notice a common thread through the list. The Stormwater Bureau looks at green infrastructure potential in the paving plan, the city's Vision Zero and Safe Streets for All initiatives, which is why you'll see things like Reservoir Park in the stormwater CIP as well. Just to note, there is going to be green infrastructure at Joe Jackson, Yule Gantz, and South End, the parks that Cindy highlighted earlier. And so we strategically incorporate green infrastructure in as many of these projects as possible. Other collaborative efforts that you see on this list include the stormwater costs for capital improvements. They might not be green infrastructure, but they will have important stormwater benefit, and again, alleviating flooding, improving conditions in our streets and in our community. The Operations Center facility stormwater contribution, there will be some stormwater improvements that happens through those consolidated and expansion opportunities that Steve touched on, as well as green infrastructure at the new Bay Street Community Garden, which we hope to begin planning next year with implementation as early as 2027. So this integrated approach stretches every dollar, lowers total project costs, and minimizes disruption to residents when we can be tackling certain construction or multiple construction efforts at the same time. So thanks for bearing with me. I know I'm bouncing around a lot. The only two items that I hadn't specifically mentioned on this list are the corrective actions, the green infrastructure corrective actions, and that's what I had alluded to before. We are putting sort of a slightly increased placeholder in future years to account for the fact that as we grow our green infrastructure program and as these systems age, we do want to be allocating funding for the renewal of those green infrastructure assets that we have. And then last but certainly not least is the Trees for People implementation, which will use a combination of federal funds and the 2022 Stormwater Bond funding for the Urban Forest Reset. This is under construction right now around our city streets and will continue on through the next few years. We presented a little bit about the urban forestry program to council earlier this year, but again, we're creating a healthier, more robust tree canopy along the city streets. This tackles a number of stormwater related goals. We think that trees are the city's best green infrastructure, as well as other climate resiliency goals as well. So over the next 5 years, residents will see projects in more parks, more neighborhoods, and more public spaces, and again, to manage stormwater and to improve our daily life through those other benefits that I had mentioned.
Before we,
Oh, sure, sure, yes. Questions
you.
about stormwater projects?
I do have a question.
Yes.
The lines for the MS4 collection system and the, there's another line, I'm sorry. And the, oh, I see, the green infrastructure corrective action.
Yes.
Actually, no, just the MS4 system line. So that's the same number repeated year over year. I'm assuming there was some assumptions made about just like average cost. Can you talk a little bit more about what those could be? And then also, I see it's in the unfunded category. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. There were some assumptions made, and this is a combination of upgrades that we might need to make in our separate sewer areas. This is a placeholder because we don't know yet what those might be. The other sort of big placeholder, and the reason that it's unfunded is because the city is actually in compliance and has met all of its current MS4 permit project requirements. It was called a pollutant reduction plan, and the city has fulfilled those obligations. The state is revising the permit requirements for the MS4 permit, but it has administratively extended the permit for at least another 12 months, and we do not know yet what the permit obligations will be. So we don't know yet what we will spend or where we will target those funds yet.
Exactly when.
Yeah, or exactly when. And so what we've done is made an educated guess based on the money that was spent in the last permit cycle. And we were very successful with grant funding and other types of funds, Penvest loans, things like that for some of those projects. So we are confident that once we know what those permit obligations will be, we can be updating those numbers and hopefully have much less in the unfunded category to present to council next year.
That makes sense that we will be able to match them with funding sources as we get a little bit more defined.
Yep.
So, thank you. Councilors, anything on this one before we proceed? Councilor Hirsch.
Thank you, Council President. Just had a brief question on the Trees for People program. And I understand that that's going forward over the next couple of years into 2028. Can you just reiterate what the goal is as far as like number of trees planted over the next 3 years? And then if you happen to have it available, what progress has been made thus far on said goals?
Sure. I'm trying to do some fast math in my head here. I know that through $500,000 in ARPA funding that the city received through the Lancaster Clean Water Partners, we are installing about 380 new street trees this year. I think we're about halfway through that target. So probably a little under 200 trees were planted in the spring, and then the rest will be fall planting. There's some concrete work associated with that project happening now. So that will wrap up by the end of this year. And then with the other federal funds that we received from the U.S. Forest Service, we are targeting about, we're still finalizing the numbers. We were looking at trying to find upwards of 400 new street tree wells around the city, and then either conducting restorative pruning to bring trees that were in fair condition back up to an acceptable level of health, tree health, and then where that wasn't appropriate, removing and replacing trees as part of that effort. So that could be another upwards of 200 to 300 new trees through that effort as well. So it would be 450 plus 380 plus 2 to 300 more.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Counselors, anything additional on this slide? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So far, so good.
That was the okay one. Okay.
Next, we're going to turn to Utilities Enterprise Funds, which will be outlined by Deputy Director of both wastewater and water utilities, Christine Volke-Hilditch.
Good evening. Next slide, please. So we're going to start with the wastewater treatment plant. Our plant's located off New Danville Pike, right outside the city. It has a capacity of 32 million gallons a day. On a good day, dry weather, we may be running about 18 million gallons a day. When it rains, our flows can go up to 50 million gallons a day. So you can see by the picture, there's a lot of facilities, there's a lot of components. In addition to the plant, we also have 7 pump stations that pump wastewater to the plant. Wastewater also comes in through gravity to the plant, and we also maintain over hundreds of force main and gravity sewer within the system. So when we go through our capital plan, you can see that it's a significant investment to treat water. And on this end, we're reclaiming wastewater and putting it back into the Conestoga River. Next slide. So our drivers are our infrastructure and regulatory requirements. As you've heard over the years, we have a judicial consent decree with the EPA and the DEP to address our combined sewer overflows, and we're required to develop a long-term control plan. We've submitted an alternatives analysis, and our next regulatory requirement is in September to submit the long-term control plan. The regulatory drivers in wastewater are significant. We are now being regulated with a new NPDES permit, which is the permit that allows us to discharge into the Conestoga River that has additional requirements. Most important is the start of monitoring for the forever chemicals. You've heard a lot about those in the news, and we'll be talking a little bit more about them in our water system. So when we talk about not knowing what the future holds and that we will be revising this capital plan year over year, our regulatory drivers will be what affects us. In Pennsylvania, we are still allowed to land apply the solids generated in the wastewater treatment process. We do this also under permit, and in several states throughout the nation, that practice is being eliminated. So our concern as a driver for the future is that we generate less biosolids. We are looking at significant infrastructure spending for digestion, anaerobic digestion, which will allow us to both reduce the amount of solids that we have to dispose of, as well as give us opportunities in energy generation. One of the things that the current federal regulations allow is the ability to generate credits for developing green gas. An anaerobic digester generates methane, and that methane can be reused on the grid, on the gas grid. So we're trying to position ourselves for less expenses, although debt will increase. We'll be looking at less costs for disposal. Over the past 10 years, we've seen our disposal costs double. You know, we're over $2 million now for disposal costs for sludge. Next slide, please. Within our capital projects, we have funding for what we call our municipal partners. So the plant takes in wastewater from the Lancaster Area Sewer Authority, from the Suburban Area Sewer Authority, from, I'm missing one, Leola, as well as East Lampeter Sewer Authority. So several other municipal partners contribute to capital projects at the wastewater plant as well as the stations, the pump stations. So depending on the use in terms of their flow contribution will drive how much they contribute to the capital projects. So in our project information, we have what the city will be spending, as well as some of these will be contributed by other funding sources. We'll start with anaerobic digestion, which is to install dryers and tanks that will reduce the amount of sludge that we generate. Our next project is a secondary clarifier. Clarifiers settle the solids that are generated in the process. We'll be adding a 6th clarifier for additional treatment capacity and resiliency. The next project is the rehabilitation of an interceptor that feeds the Conestoga Gardens pumping station. Following that is the Water Street Sewer Separation Project. We'll be separating a combined sewer system, which will help reduce our combined sewer overflows. We're adding a scrubber in our chlorination facilities. This is for safety and resiliency so that we can address any issues with chlorine. The North Primary Clarifier Rehabilitation is for new equipment within those tanks, new flights, scrapers, that will help settle the sludge. South Screening Headworks is for new screens. These screen the wastewater as it comes into the plant. The collection systems improvement is a placeholder for any issues that occur within the collection system. And we'll see this as a placeholder year over year. This project allows us to line and replace gravity sewers within the system. The South Primary Clarifier Rehabilitation, very similar to the North project, we are replacing equipment within the tanks, rehabilitating the concrete as part of that project. Broad Street is another sewer separation project. Next slide, I'm sorry. So on the second page, we have structural repair and piping system upgrades. Some of our piping and the plant property is from the 1930s, 1980s. So we'll be looking at replacing key pipes. We've had some leaks over the years, so this is a general rehabilitation project of all the piping. Our motor control center replacement is in the control building. We'll be replacing switchgear within that building. The North Pump Station CSO outfall project is to rehabilitate the Clay Street outfall. This is up near the McCaskey campus. The system is about 100 years old, so we'll be structurally reinforcing the sewer outfall and the piping that leads to that outfall. The South Train diversion is for chlorination improvements on our CSO outfall 100, our combined outfall. We are rebuilding 4 belt filter presses and 2 discharge conveyors. This is in our solids processing, and the presses dewater the sludge and the conveyors take it out to the trucks for disposal. The chlorine contact upgrade is for structural repairs in our chlorine contact tanks. The next project is site paving. We have a significant large site and we're repaving it. And the last one is the lime stabilization is to replace the biofilters odor control system media.
Thank you.
So it's a lot of projects.
It is.
Over 5 years, mainly because of the infrastructure. So one of our drivers, as I said, is the regulatory requirements. You will note in this particular list of projects, we do not have major long-term control plan projects. That is because our strategy, when we're putting in our alternative analysis, is to concentrate on infrastructure and wastewater, and more importantly, the drivers in water. So we'll be spending a lot of money on water. I know this is bad, but water is even more because of the regulatory drivers. So we are going to propose to the EPA that we will first spend money in the water system for compliance, and we will not start spending on the CSOs other than some of the sewer separation projects and the GI projects that Molly mentioned. But the rest of the spending would be out in probably 2037. We're spending 10 years spending in water, and then we'll start spending in sewer, other than what we're talking about is the normal repair and replacement of the infrastructure.
Thank you. Before we proceed, I have 2 questions. The first is the impacts of those separation projects, Water Street sewer separation, and then there was others there. Overall, what is the impact of those projects? I know you mentioned focusing on the water first, but is that a significant or an insignificant impact? If you could kind of just talk about it in general terms.
I'm going to refer that to Molly because she's going to be managing the project, but sewer's going to be paying for it.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Yes, so the Water Street sewer separation will be built ahead of the Water Street Bike Boulevard project that Cindy spoke about. This will remove approximately 40 acres of impervious drainage that is today going into the Angleside sewer shed, which is the city's largest combined sewer system, and at a relatively cost-efficient manner. Projected costs are about, I just looked at this yesterday, $250,000 per acre, which is a little bit less than what our green infrastructure costs. Again, there are some efficiencies in the fact that we're collaborating with other users, and that there was a portion along Fairview that was separated several decades ago, but was just then tied back into the combined sewer system. So we'll be disconnecting that. Broad Street is less, it's about 9 acres, but then we will have the opportunity to disconnect from the north basin and into infrastructure that the city actually already built under the Wickersham turf fields, under the McCaskey campus, yes. And then we'll have the opportunity to daylight that stormwater into Groff's Run, which the city invested in a stream restoration project a number of years ago. So it will bring back some base flow, and we're already collaborating with the school district to incorporate some environmental opportunities there as well.
Great. Thank you for that context. That's exactly the kind of connection I was hoping to make with that question. And then my second question is, the last line on the first slide, the last one on the list, annual escrow, special and emergency improvements. So obviously we have to put something aside and plan for rainy days. No pun intended, rainy days. Lots of rainy days. Rainy days in terms of like when things happen that we don't plan for. Has this number that we've chosen, $500,000 annually, does that generally line up with about how much we typically spend on these sort of like emergency improvements that come up?
No.
Okay.
It is a placeholder.
Okay.
We contribute a little less than $250,000, and so do the partners.
Okay.
We put it in escrow, and we tap it as needed. So it may be a small planned project, like we buy a new mixer in the aeration system, a small roof repair, or it may be because something broke.
Okay.
So it is a placeholder. We've been doing it for the last maybe 8 years. It's been working pretty well. Sometimes we even defer, like, every year, but maybe it's every 14 months, or maybe we have to fund every 8 months. But we fund it, we plan for it on a frequency of an annual contribution.
Thank you for that, and I appreciate the good stewardship of our systems. Any additional questions from council on these 2 slides? Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Kalixt.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for the presentation. And I'm not sure who would answer this question, and how is the department working to minimize the cost of those projects?
We competitively bid all of our projects. We always ask the engineers to do a cost estimate so we can determine whether we are in budget. From estimates we might have done with, during the design process. So our biggest driver is competitive bidding, so that you're putting together a good set of plans and specifications that you can put out. We do our bidding on the platform called PennBid, so it's widely advertised within the state. So I think the most important thing is to have good plans and specifications so that your contractors know exactly what you want and you minimize your changeovers for any unforeseen circumstances.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. All right. Councilor Arroyo.
Maybe this question is too soon for tonight, but curious about capacity and project management for a lot of these projects. There's a lot going on, especially in 26 and 27. What does capacity look like on the teams, as well as what does project management look like in sequencing these projects? Just kind of thinking about construction, thinking about resident experience. How does that play a factor into some of the timeline for a lot of these projects?
When we look at, in terms of internal, external capacity, our design work is done with outside engineers, managed with inside engineers. The largest project will be the digester project, and the phasing of that will also be looked at as our debt, changes, because that'll be a significant borrowing. We will be at least 2 years plus in design and probably 3 to 4 years in construction. So it'll be a steady project that will go on long term. The clarifier, I thought we'd already be under design. We had some funding set aside in previous bond funds and ended up reconfiguring projects because of the time it's taking to buy the land. We have to buy a little sliver of land from PP&L to put the clarifier in the northern part of the plant. That has taken significant time. They're now in PUC approval for selling that little piece of land to us as another municipal entity. And then we have to go through a land development process with Lancaster Township. So I'm a little concerned on when we actually can start, more right now than the capacity issue, mainly because a lot of our projects on this are at the plant, so our in-house engineer can keep an eye on them, but we'll also have inspectors from the consulting, we will have inspectors from the consulting engineer who will help manage the day-to-day. So we do have and we do access outside help.
On a slightly different note, I think it is impressive, the amount of projects that that are being discussed this evening. We do have a lot of expertise within DPW and city staff. I also am very pleased with the collaboration that happens between divisions in the city as well. I know, we have a lot of projects that are either out to bid or going out to construction, and there's a lot of expertise in all four divisions, but when we're looking at a stormwater project, we rely on one of the public works engineers who is an expert in procurement, and we will rely on a wastewater project manager, on some of these sewer separation projects. And so we really do, I think, work well together to sort of lighten the load a bit, and we are all busy. Yeah.
And if I could just add one last thing, we do on an annual basis in the operations budget for the staff. We don't always fill or fulfill all those vacancies or all the needs that are required to fulfill the work, but that's why we have some flexibility to work with outside contractors and outside consultants as well. If suddenly we get oversight agencies that are quick in their review and get things done a bit faster, that generally means we can accelerate or move a project forward faster. But that also means we need to calculate, do we have the staff internally to manage that work? Do we go outside to do that work or not? Rarely is that the case, although there have been several cases, especially in wastewater in the last couple of years where things have gotten accelerated. But similarly, there are things that get delayed.
Thank you. All right, we can continue. Thank you.
So now I'd like to talk about our water system. Our water system has two plants, one on the Conestoga River and one on the Susquehanna River. Combined, they can produce 36 million gallons of water a day. We also have one reservoir, Oyster Point, 5 water tanks, and 4 pump stations, as well as hundreds of miles of pipe underground. We serve over, excuse me, we serve over 120,000 people within the city and the surrounding municipalities. Our investment drivers in water are replacing our aging infrastructure. We've been producing water since the late 1800s at the Conestoga site. Now granted, we don't have the same plant, but that's how long we've been producing water. Our Susquehanna plant was built in the 1950s. So when you start thinking about it, all of a sudden that's 80 years ago. So we have, what we'll talk about tonight is some of our larger projects, which is to replace transmission lines that are now 80 years old. And you don't think about how long we've been producing water in the city. But water right now is facing many state and federal regulations. Most recently, we had the improved lead and copper rule, and they did call it that, the improved lead and copper rule. What the improvement was is that we had to replace all lead service lines within 10 years. The first regulation that came out required it in 30 years. So our timelines for work have significantly decreased. We did an inventory, initial inventory that we submitted last year. We have a new inventory due in October of 2027, and then all those lines have to be replaced by 2037. And certainly you've seen us all over the website, in media, asking our water customers to please identify their service line in their homes. So those efforts will continue. The other significant regulatory driver is the maximum contaminant levels. We call these MCLs for PFOS and PFOA. And those are the forever chemicals. They were passed in January 14th of 2023. It's required quarterly monitoring at the entry points of our water into the system at both treatment plants. We've been very successful in our monitoring efforts on the Susquehanna River, or excuse me, the Susquehanna plant, which takes water from the Susquehanna River. We've been well under these MCLs. However, as we saw the effects of the drought over the past year, we saw the levels of PFOA increase at in the Conestoga River for customers served by the Conestoga plant. These are significant regulatory drivers. We've been told by the PADEP that they expect us, to be in compliance. We haven't negotiated any consent decrees or agreements at this point in time. We've just been put on notice. But we are planning for long-term compliance. Because on the federal level, they have published even more stringent regulations at 4 parts per trillion. And these will be effective in April of 2029. So we have 2 drivers here on the state level, a requirement that's in effect now, and one on the federal level in 2029. There's certainly been a lot in the news about the concern of forever chemicals. Our monitoring and planning continues to achieve compliance with these standards. And it's put water companies throughout the nation at a disadvantage where we're treating for a contaminant that we never created. It's not naturally occurring, it was a man-made chemical, and now we're all forced to address it accordingly with the regulations. Another significant driver has been the drought and water withdrawal. The city is regulated by the DEP in Pennsylvania on how much it can withdraw from the Conestoga River. And over the next 25 years, they expect us to withdraw less, so that as climate change occurs and there are droughts from time to time, we will be constrained by how much water we can pull out of the river. So we're looking at long-term planning to address that too. Okay. So now I'd like to get into the projects. Next slide, please. Our first 2 projects are to replace those 1950-era transmission lanes from the Susquehanna plant. We're looking at phase 2, the line that runs from the Susquehanna treatment plant to the Oyster Point Reservoir, and phase 3 is the raw water transmission main from the intake on the Susquehanna River to the treatment plant. So these 2 projects, we're in right now permitting with DEP, and we do expect to go out to bid late in the year or early next year, pending approval of our Penvest loan. We do expect to go seek Penvest financing for these 2 particular projects. Our next project is the lead service line. This particular project will not be spent all at once. We'll have a series of smaller projects as we submit for funding to the Penvest Authority. We've recently been successful on a small project in the city of about 100 lines. where we did get part grant funding and part loan funding. So we'll be doing similar investments over the next couple years. Our next project is the South Pump Station, which will start later in 2028. This station will help feed the new south tank. The next are the lead service line improvements, near term. When this was ranked highest to lowest, that's why the two projects kind of separated. The next project is the intake for the Susquehanna Low Service Pump Station. This screens the water as it comes into the pump station, and then it's pumped to the plant. We have placeholders for replacement of transite water pipe within the distribution system. The next is water quality improvements at Lafayette Tank, which also are driven by water quality regulations. The next is a placeholder for cleaning and lining pipes in the distribution system. The next is handling solids at the Conestoga plant to improve our treatment system. The next is at the Conestoga plant, rehabbing the tanks that are in the treatment system. They're the rapid mix and the equalization tanks. Next slide, please. This project is replacement of the large cast iron mains that are near the water plant. These are big distribution mains. This is a design of the PFAS compliance. Our preliminary solution is that we will be looking at taking water from the Susquehanna River instead of the Conestoga River. We'll be basically putting in another line, a set of lines to bring water into the plant. The next is the Conestoga membrane replacement. The cast iron pipe and materials are for city crews for self-performance of work within the city. The Conestoga clear well coating replacement is next. The other two are to replace, the next one is Vactors for transmission and distribution. This is for our crews in the performance of their duties. The Susquehanna water treatment plant clear well relining, very similar to the Conestoga. The clear wells are what hold the finished water. They are anywhere from 80 years old to 100 years old in age, so we'll be doing a major project of rehabilitating the concrete and then coating that concrete. This will extend the life of the tanks. The next is replacing electrical equipment at the Conestoga water treatment plant. The next one is a placeholder for lead service line customer reimbursements. We are required under the Pennsylvania Public Utilities, the PUC, to replace lead lines on either side of the service lateral. Not only what the city owns, but what the customer owns. And this is a placeholder for lead line replacements that customers had done since the promulgation of the regulations of the PUC. The next project is the Oyster Point Reservoir cleanout. We'll be cleaning out the reservoir while it's still online using either divers or drones. We'll be bidding that project out and then doing a structural inspection of the tank, of the reservoir tank. And our last project, we basically summarized a lot of small water projects within the transmission and distribution system, the plants, to kind of roll it up, so we wouldn't be into multiple pages. So water has significant investment. It takes a lot to treat water.
Yes. Thank you very much. And every time I see these numbers, I'm reminded of exactly how much we have invested into this resource. So thank you for that. Counselors, anything on the last set of slides? Thank you very much. Unless there's anything that you would like to add at the end, it is a public hearing, so we will hear any comments from the public, but I just want to make sure you had an opportunity to finish your presentation if there was anything else.
This does conclude the presentation.
Mhm.
I do ask that people, if there's things that you want presented in a different way as we go forward, we're in the process of building the foundation of how we talk about the capital planning process
Mhm.
and how you want to receive data and information.
Great.
So we want to be careful about that.
Thank you very much. Yes, so this is a public hearing on the capital budget, so comments around presentation of information would be appropriate at this point. If there are any, folks can join us at the microphone there. You'll need to turn it back on, and anyone who's sitting here will turn their mics off while so we don't get cross. That's our theory. Are there any comments on the capital improvement plan hearing?
Council President, while the public makes their way up.
Sure.
If I may, just wanted to express my gratitude to the Public Works team for putting this presentation together and clearly for all the work that you guys do on a day-to-day basis. Thank you.
Thank you. For those making public comment this evening, I'll reiterate from earlier, please begin with your name, block of residence, and 3-minute timer. So, good evening.
Evening. Tony Dasher, 700 block of New Holland Avenue. So it's greatly ironic that tonight we hear the capital budget hearing when, as we just heard, water is expensive and the public's looking at a massive data center, which sure, it may initially be air-cooled, but these sort of systems, unregulated, may produce great burden to our water system. And since water is expensive, what can not only the ratepayers of Lancaster City, but the ratepayers of the entire area serviced by the city expect if there's a massive use that's going to use a considerable amount of water? If we don't put in place now regulations to ensure that if they're going to be water cooled, use non-potable water. Regulations like that could maybe even be advantageous to meeting our consent decree. We have hundreds of thousands of gallons we have to reduce. And this private investment that's coming to our community, which has very little regard for what we need as a public, there's nothing in place to protect us. This whole presentation is valued, but it's terrifying in the face of these private investments that are going unregulated. So, I am curious if the Public Works Department has been made aware of these plans, and if so, when. Those are my comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dastra. Any additional comment, on the capital improvement plan specifically? Good evening.
Good evening. Taylor Raymond, 500 block of St. Joseph Street. Is this presentation going to be available on the website? That's all I might have one follow-up question.
Is it possible that this would be, I'm assuming it will be on the Public Works? Yes.
Okay, that was everything. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, similar to how the original list of projects was made available on June 30th,
Mhm.
this presentation can also be made, will also be made available as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Any additional public comments on the capital improvement plan? Good evening.
Hi, again, Emma Burgess, 600 West Vine Street. My comment is I came here to yell about the AI data center, and I heard this presentation as well, and I loved it. So thank you for giving that. I learned so much. That's my comment. Thank you, public officials.
Thank you. It's not all sexy, but I mean, I think the wastewater stuff is fascinating. So that, whatever that says about me, but thank you for that. Any additional comments on the hearing? I'm sorry. Yes, so the rest of our agenda will proceed, including our legislative agenda, which we have not yet gotten to tonight. I'll remind everybody. Second public comment period, report of the mayor, council comments, and adjournment. So, yes. If there are no other comments for the capital improvement hearing, we will close it, and I will thank you all for your hard work and dedication on this. As I'm listening to this, I'm reminded that other cities don't have this type of planning in place, and we are fortunate to be able to think this far ahead. So thank you. I'll leave it at that.
Very much. We really appreciate the opportunity to make it as transparent as practical to the public what we do and how we do it.
Thank you. Councilors, the next item on our agenda is interim reports of committees of council, of which we have none this evening, so we will move then into our legislative agenda. The first item is resolutions. Making sure that Mr. Harris has the screen back up and that he's ready. Of which we have one this evening. The one and only is Administration Resolution Number 52, 2025. When you're ready, Mr. Harris.
Yes, Madam President. A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster authorizing the filing of an application for funding through the Commonwealth Financing Authority Multimodal Transportation Fund Program in an amount not to exceed $2.8 million.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second, and I apologize, I don't recall if this is coming up through Public Works or Finance.
Public Works.
Public Works. Councilor Hirsch, thank you.
Thank you, Council President. This resolution authorizes the City of Lancaster to enter into a grant application to apply for the grant through the Commonwealth Financing Authority's Multimodal Transportation Fund. This is in relation to the eastbound connector, which is in the interim going to be a series of bike lanes and routes that get going eastward out of the city to Conestoga Pines Park, and then ultimately the plan is to get to the goat path from there out in East Lampeter Township. The amount is for this grant not to exceed $2.8 million. If you recall in our committee, that had not been established, but it is entered into here. And the only other comment I'll add, correct me if I'm wrong, Director Campbell, but I believe this is in almost as a follow-up to previous grant funding we had received, and we were actually asked to or invited to apply again, which is exciting. And the city is, obviously coordinating with Manheim Township and Lancaster Township as well, because they are also involved. And I think from what I've gathered in our conversations, Director Campbell, it's going to be a lot of, again, interim strategy towards a longer-term project of how to make that connection work, because it's definitely complicated between getting through the Conestoga River and some of the other obstacles in that particular area. So this is hopefully going to go towards connecting.
Thank you very much, Councilor Hirsch. Director Campbell, if you have anything additional.
Yes, thank you. I'm often amazed at how well you are able to encapsulate the core of what we're doing here. This is, in fact, this would in fact be the implementation dollars to actually do the construction. We have money that we've put together from previous grants and from the 2022 bond and 2025 bond to be able to do the design work and work with the adjacent municipalities. This is part of trying to complete or finish off some of the connections between the city's active transportation network infrastructure and the county active transportation network as well. This is what's going to make Lancaster that much more magical as a place to live, work, and play. So I just wanted to give a little bit of that as an enhancement to what you had described. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Campbell. Counselors, are there any additional comments on the resolution? Comments on the resolution from the public? Great. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Ahmed?
Aye.
Mr. Royo?
Aye.
Mr. Gleason?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Harsh?
Aye.
President Bega?
Aye. Thank you. That concludes our legislative agenda for this evening. We'll take us to our second public comment period. This is open for comment on issues not previously on the agenda. Duration of comments is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. For those wishing to make public comment during this period, please proceed to the microphone at this time. Begin with your name and block of residence for our meeting record. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Julie Zug, and I'm living at the 0 block of East Walnut Street. And I came here planning only to listen and learn, with some concerns about the data center. These are just a few of the puzzle pieces I've picked up this evening. Now, the proposed location of the data center, the LSC Communications property on Greenfield Road, was recently reported as being the other LSC Communications property on Harrisburg Pike, which is Lancaster City. But Greenfield, if I'm not mistaken, is Lancaster Township.
Nope.
It's not.
It's in the city.
Okay,
Yep.
I was looking at a
It's on
map
the
of the
line
city
between East
boundaries, but-
Lampeter and the city.
Okay, all right. However, this property is located, according to the maps I've looked at, on Greenfield Road. However, it's across the street from the Conestoga Pines Pool, which the city appears to be ready to study into relocating, but still it's included in consideration of the capital budget for their for the eastbound connector plan. And I'm not sure I understand how that's working, if that's part of something that you're planning on relocating. Now, the developer of this data center, Machine Investment Group, a simple Google search, a New York-based real estate investment platform, which, according to their own website, is focused on opportunistic, distressed, and special situations across the United States. They were formed by former senior executives of the Garrison Investment Group, a Delaware LLC, also out of New York, which was sanctioned in September of 2022 for failing to have required audits performed and to deliver the audited financials to investors. I would urge our city and anyone involved in planning this thing to stop selling our city out to the investment bankers. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mimi Shapiro, the 200 block of North Concord Street. And this is about the data center also. There was a long article, okay, thank you. I have a scratchy voice anyway. A long article in the May 25th in Time magazine about the data center in Granbury, Texas. And here, ours is also going to be air-cooled. Will there be fans and noise, excessive and unhealthy noise, running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Where is all this electricity coming from? Do we have the local infrastructure for it? And who is going to be paying for all the usage? All of us need electricity to run our houses. What equivalent household usage in water and power will the data center be using? The issue is when the data center consumes water and electricity how will that affect our domestic supply and our costs? Just staying in the building's old footprint at the old printing plant so that they do not need approval. I don't really understand the approval process. Seems that we do not have sufficient information if we don't know what's going on, what's happening. How are we, Lancaster City, going to deal with it if you have nothing to say about what's going on? In Granbury, Texas, which is not too far from Fort Worth, which is a big city, there have been very strange medical emergencies from the thousands of fans emitting a constant buzz. I am sure our citizens don't want to be living in some strange, unhealthy episode of the Twilight Zone. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Darrell Legacy. I'm from the 100 block of North Mary. And I didn't initially come to see all of the capital plan, but I'm glad I did because a lot of it was actually really interesting and helpful. And there also are parts of that that I think apply to the data center, one of which is spending $400,000 on Conestoga Pines, which is right next door. And I question how much that park is going to be used when there are fans going 24/7 right next to it. And I think that's something we should be considering when we're determining whether we're going to spend that money. I also think what's really interesting to me is that we have to do a land development plan for buying that one little strip from PPL, but the data center doesn't. That means we, as the city, are doing a development plan for ourselves as the city that this external company does not need to do. I think that is a huge problem, and that's indicative of what is happening here that is problematic. I think everybody that has spoken has done a good job already explaining most of the issues. There are a couple things that haven't come up. If you go to the Charissa website, which they're the company that's developing this, they say Lancaster East, which I assume is the Greenfield, but they also say Lancaster West. So even though there's nothing official, on their website it says Lancaster West under development. You can all go see that right now. So they are planning what I assume is the 1375 Harrisburg Pike location, regardless of whether they've said they are doing that or not. They're telling you on their website they are doing it. And that is right next to Long's Park. Like, does everybody realize is right next to Long's Park? So I have some questions that I think need to be considered, in addition to the ones that people have already said. One is, who is going to be responsible to see if they expand past the existing footprint, thereby triggering the land development plan, the wastewater treatment plan, and all of these things they are going to have to do? I mean, who is going to be measuring, did they expand past the existing footprint? I mean, it has to be us. It has to be the city. I don't trust them. I think, and I'm sure they're going to say, no, we didn't. And I don't think we should be trusting them on that. Also, I think we need to think about the one, especially at Harrisburg Pike, but probably the one near in Greenfield as well. Have they done any studies on animal impact? There are many, many, many migratory birds that are in Long's Park. Are they affected? Will they be affected by this semi-secret location that they're clearly planning to do? And I think that's something that we need to be thinking about. I also think we should be thinking about the impact of construction. What's going to happen, not only Greenfield, but Harrisburg Pike? I mean, what's going to happen when you're literally talking next door to Long's Park, huge construction equipment, I would assume for years, potentially building this, this location. And I just think those are extra questions you should all be asking and we should all be thinking about, and I don't think we should be moving ahead until we have answers. Thank you.
Good evening.
Hello. Oh, sorry. Am I good? Okay. Brittany Mitchell, 400 block of East Grant Street. And I also wasn't planning on speaking today, so I'm just going to kind of go for it and say what's in my heart. I just, hearing the report from President Baquet with a lot of those really sort of nice, comforting details about, you know, the cooling span and all of the reasons why the water's going to be okay and all of that stuff, I just can't help but wonder, what about any experience that we've had in our country with unmitigated capitalistic self-interest in an environment that is completely devoid of any regulations would make us think that we should trust or listen to that. Something about me is I probably have plastics in my brain. Most of you guys probably do too. You know, microplastics are in all of us, and I'm sure decades ago those companies would have said, hey, everything's hunky-dory, check out our cool fan, we'll write you a nice little check, and whatever else they would have had to say to get their foot in the door, and now it's too late. I don't know what that's going to do to us long term. We don't have a lot of, you know, scientific data on microplastics, but we're still kind of in that find out era, and it's not looking good. I don't have any children, but I care about your kids, and I'm not willing to sign them up to be a real-time experiment of how much poison air you can breathe. I hope that you guys aren't willing to do that either, because this is a thing that once we let it into our community, we're not going to be able to undo it. Those effects are going to be real. So I'm not naive. I hope that you guys aren't either. I just hope that you can, you know, be honest with yourselves about what you are about to let into the community where we all have to live every day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony Dastra, 700 block of New Holland Avenue. I'm glad Watergate got brought up earlier, because there's a favorite song of mine by Stevie Wonder that was written for Richard Nixon. It's called You Haven't Done Nothing. The first 8 lines go like this. We are amazed but not amused by all the things you'll say that you'll do, though much concerned but not involved with decisions that are made by you. But we are sick and tired of hearing your song, telling how you are gonna change right from wrong. 'Cause if you really want to hear our views, you haven't done nothing. And that's the case here. We have an opportunity to let this go through a use not provided for process, as our zoning ordinance dictates. Instead, we've said, screw all the red tape. And I think that's insane, because the use that this is provided for, so it has additional words behind it that were not in LMP. One of those being an exclusion for processing. Data is being processed. I don't care that it's not something we can physically hold. Those storage blocks and the heat they produce are very real. This issue is very real. This issue is very concerning, and if you care about working families at all, you need to do something now. You need to speak out now. Because people are about to be greatly hurt financially, their health. The fact that people have to come to this this council meeting, just to feel like they have the possibility of being heard. This is the same city council I'm frustrated with for trying to gut the tree ordinance. Environmental issues have always been a secondary priority in the last, I don't know, handful of years. We have a comprehensive plan that talks about eco districts, and I'm still mad at the Planning Commission, which I'm a part of, for not amending the zoning ordinances to this day. Everyone here should be mad at the Planning Commission too. We have a significant amount of work to do, but we were too concerned about giving people city council districts, things like that. This is a shame, and the fact that you're trying to distance yourselves from this is an abhorrent use of words.
Good evening.
Hello. My name is Christina Sodorescu. I actually live close to Centerville, but I, work and live in Lancaster City. So, I was an undergraduate and a master's graduate of Carnegie Mellon University, where CoreWeave recently announced their intention to use Lancaster County in their AI expansion plan. For years as a student there, we weren't just educated on the beneficial uses of AI, we were also taught the full picture of all that comes with AI, including the negative implications that are impossible to separate from the good stuff. I appreciate your notes earlier today about, the press release that happened very recently. Some part of me, believes you when you say a lot of you just recently heard about this in terms of the transparency, but it is odd to hear, the words transparency and the surprise update of construction having started already in the same sentence. So I kind of wonder what your accountability procedures are in order to make sure that those other parties do uphold transparency. So with all of this updates, it feels remarkably fast for something that will forever change the landscape of our city. So I want to address my statement to Lancaster itself, the city that raised me, and the place that gave me real tangible things to value. I moved back home from after living in a big city after 4 years of college, and I uprooted my community and life there, to come back home. And sometimes you don't really appreciate what you have until you move away and you can't find it anywhere else. On my move back, I drove through 44 contiguous states, hoping that a city would surprise me and, call me to its home, but nowhere is like Lancaster. Some of my friends in New York or Philadelphia come to Lancaster specifically for the amazing dairy, for the fresh fruits and vegetables that come at an unbeatable price. Some of my friends in Los Angeles ask me to flip the camera when I FaceTime them because they can't fathom how close I live to agriculture and nature day by day. The fields, the pastures, the silos, the bucolic scenery, the backyards, the nature trails, the central market, the Amish people. This is my love letter to you, Lancaster. And it is my love that I ask everyone to consider. Do we really need to force ourselves to be on the map as it relates to higher tech jobs? Why should we sacrifice what makes us honest, what increases the quality of our lives in order to perpetuate a faster and frankly crappier lifestyle? What good is, a single, few $billion investment when it sacrifices the multi-billion we make annually on agriculture, food processing, tourism, and other related sectors? I'm really happy Memphis came up earlier because that Colossus computer has access to 50 megawatts of energy, and they, were petitioning to try to get up to 150.
I appreciate your comments, but we've reached 3 minutes.
Okay, ours is 100 and it goes to 300, so.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Taylor Raymond, 500 block of St. Joseph Street. I'd like to first start by saying that I agree with several community members who have come up and requested a change in our zoning laws to exclude the data center as the wholesale trade and storage. Some place like this needs significantly more oversight than it has. The data centers will, they contribute to a rise in greenhouse gases like CO2 because as the growth of AI continues to rise, we cannot keep up with sustainable energy to cover the difference. So it's going to increase the effects of climate change locally and globally, which is going to have an outsized impact on our poorest residents, including the ones who live outside. They are not very very well regulated by any government, but there are some governments that we can look to for groundwork, essentially. Notably, Ireland, the EU AI Act, and the Senator Ed Markey, who's a Democrat, he's pushing for more info and sustainability on AI. I think that we should be following suit, and we shouldn't allow this data center. As I said at the last city council meeting, I work at the Lancaster County Tax Collection Bureau, which is less than a mile as the crow flies from the Greenfield Road data center area. So not only do I live in the city, I work so close, and as you said, It straddles the line of East Lampeter, East Lampeter. So it affects not only city residents, but anybody who works in the city, anybody who lives or works in East Lampeter. I don't think that we should allow this because it affects so much more than we have any control at City Council over. Yeah, that is everything I've got.
Thank you. Good evening.
Ellen Sloan. I live in the first block of North Lime Street. I'm not going to talk about the data center. I'm going to talk about something I talked about 2 weeks ago, and I'll keep talking about it until I get some kind of response. I'm here once again to speak about ICE. As you may be aware, the budget reconciliation bill signed into law this month allocates $45 billion for building new immigration detention centers, which represents a 265% annual budget increase. It is a 62% larger budget than the entire federal prison system. B, almost $30 billion towards ICE enforcement and deportation operations, a threefold increase in ICE's annual budget. All this while also capping the number of immigration judges at 800, despite the record backlogs. The Trump administration means business. Lancaster calls itself a welcoming city. Some call Lancaster the refugee capital of the United States. Who among us here tonight would deny that immigrants have enriched our community beyond measure? We must do what we can to protect the folks who have come here from places of pain and struggle, looking simply for a place to live in peace. I am once again asking the City Council to pass an ordinance, A, requiring visible identification for all law enforcement agents operating within the city, including federal agents, and prohibiting facial concealment of said officers. B, banning our local police from cooperating with ICE agents, especially without warrants or clear legal justification. And C, also to work with city schools and hospitals to develop protective policies and rapid response systems when federal ICE agents show up. I'm sure you have seen the horrific videos of people being snatched off the streets or at courthouses or their places of work by masked individuals with frightening weapons, disappeared, no due process, sent to prisons far away, perhaps never to see their loved ones again. We have seen the unwanted militarization of Los Angeles. Is this what we want in our city? Secret police disappearing people? Please act before it is too late. They are coming for immigrants now. Who will they come for next? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments for this period? Good evening.
My name is Robert McLean, 123 South Christian. And I'm here, basically I have a little sign I've been showing around. It's called democracynow.org. You can get that on your computer. What you're talking about as far as this AI in this area is the tip of the iceberg. You don't have any idea, and nobody else has any idea how it's going to turn out. This woman, Karen Ho, wrote a book to explain it. And she's from China, Hong Kong, and she's back and forth in the United States. She has scared the devil out of the people who have heard her speech. And you can get a synopsis of the book on democracynow.org. just hit AI, and you will get the whole book in 1 hour's time. But everyone should have this, and find your way to examining what she's saying. She's a Chinese person who wrote this over 20 years of work. She knows what she's talking about, and we are all going to suffer in the long run and never get out of it. And it's going to financially destroy us. There's a valleys up in northern PA, whole valley, for transmission lines, big ones, to carry AI line, energy. The whole valley was threatened to be condemned for this AI business. That's what's happening around the world. This is an international station around the world. It's happening around the world, not just in here, in this area. And the whole world is suffering just on the beginning of all this. And we're all in trouble. And I would encourage you.
We will actually, the easiest way to get that to us is through Mr. Harris, and he will give us that, send us that information. Thank you so much. Are there any additional comments for this period? Hearing none, we will close the second public comment period. Thank you again. The next item on our agenda is the report of the mayor, Mayor Sirachi.
I don't have a report this evening, given the late hour.
Thank you very much. The next item was the report of the President of Council, which I delivered at the beginning of the meeting. And the last item then, before adjournment, is council comments. Councilors, any comments this evening? Outside of our agenda. Councilor Ahmed.
Thank you, Council President. As this is an ongoing issue where we are learning more each day, I would hope that Council can receive a report on what options Council does have, what are the current situation regarding the data centers, to help make sure that Council knows what we can do to protect the city's interests moving forward and also alleviate some of the concerns that community members have shared. So thank you, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed. Any additional council comments? Hearing none, having reached the conclusion of our agenda, councilors, I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.